iPhone 13 on us for every customer. Current, new, everyone. To show the love.
How about sushi?
I just had sushi for lunch yesterday.
How about tacos?
Automatic emergency braking, one of 6 advanced safety features standard on every 2022 Chevy Equinox. Find new technology. Find new roads. Chevrolet.
Welcome to the Black Table on the Black Star Network. We have an hour each Friday that we devote to exploring ideas and subjects of special importance to African people and others fighting to build a better society. I'm your host, Greg Carr, as usual. And this week, we are especially happy to invite to the table a sister who is not only a bloodline relative, but a carrier of the intellectual legacy of one of the most important figures of the 20th century. You may have heard her name, Pauli Murray. If you've heard it more recently, it may be because in 2021, there was a film produced and distributed to the public through Amazon Studios entitled My Name, is Pauli Murray, niece of Pauli Murray and one of the ambassadors of the Pauli Murray estate. And she has co-authored a book that takes the intellectual legacy of Pauli Murray, who was a writer, a major thinker, a lawyer, a feminist, a saint, a literal saint, as you will hear in a moment, a poet, a memoirist, queer, Black, all the labels, many of which did not exist in her time, but which everybody is claiming now for her and about her. Well, we're going to hear from the family of Pauli Murray and the co-author of this wonderful book, Pauli Murray, The Life of a Pioneering Feminist and Civil Rights Activist. And we're hearing from none other than Rosita Stevens Holsey, who not only is her niece and an ambassador, she's also contributor and supporter of the Pauli Murray Center for History and Social Justice in Durham, North Carolina. Welcome to the Black Table, Sister Stevens Holsey.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm thrilled to be here.
We're thrilled to have you. As I said, we've heard so much in recent years about your aunt. And as a professor at Howard, of course, this was not news to us. We have a Pauli Murray Lounge. She's taught in our curriculum, and she's taught in other Black spaces as well. But now the world seems to have rediscovered her. And I'll be quite honest with you. I'm sure you've probably seen the documentary on Ruth Bader Ginsburg that came out a few years ago. And for those of us who had read about her and studied her, it was ironic that Pauli Murray did not play a bigger role in that documentary, since she, in many ways, provided the intellectual backbone to some of the work, much of the work that Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg did. So why don't we start with just some basic questions? Because to the world, she's Pauli Murray, this towering figure, and to you, she's Aunt Pauli. So could you talk a little bit about this? This is why this was going to be unique. I'm telling you right now, the family. Tell us a little bit about the family, yourself, and how, how the family moves.
Well, my mother, her youngest sister's name was Rosetta, and excuse me, which means rose, and I was named after her, Little Rose. Also, I have a younger sister named Renee. There are actually 5 of us who are still alive, who are actual nieces and nephews to Aunt Pauli. I act as the matriarch of the Murray Fitzgerald family because my cousin, who's 89, who also has a tie to Howard University, is legally blind.
Mm-hmm.
Her husband was Dr. Carlton Alexis, who was the interim president and executive vice president there, professor and what have you.
Yes.
But I'm very excited that I've been asked to talk about her. I always tell people that our lives intersected for 43 years, from the time I was born until the time that she died. And a lot of people ask me questions about her, which require a lot of research, which I did do for the book. But as you mentioned, I knew her as Aunt Pauli. I knew her as a very humorous and quirky, rather aggressive, cantankerous person, but also a very loving person. She was someone that felt she was equal to anyone, which I think I've gotten from her. We're all human beings. We should all be treated equally. We all have the same kind of value that someone else has. And each of us, no matter how rich or poor or Black or white, or what country we come from, our ethnicity, has value. And we talked about this a lot. Many of the conversations that I had with her personally were about the value of reading, the value of education, and quest for knowledge, and also making something of yourself. she firmly believed that education would elevate her to the human status that she feels people deserve.
Yes.
Her 5 brothers and sisters, all of them, all 6 of them were born on Madison Avenue in the family home. And they...
Madison Avenue in Baltimore?
Yes, Madison Avenue in Baltimore.
Yeah, because people, we associated her, of course, with North Carolina, but she was actually...
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
She was actually born in the family home, as all 5 of her brothers and sisters were.
Yes,
but unfortunately, her mother had 6 children fairly close together. Pauli, my mother next, and the last child, Uncle Raymond, born a year later. So my grandmother, Aunt Pauli's mother,
yes,
died when Aunt Pauli was 3. And she had already spent about 9 months in North Carolina with Aunt Pauline because their mother had been ill and had some difficulties carrying another child. So
and
after...
Pauline was Pauli Murray's auntie. This was her mother's sister.
Her mother's sister.
Yes, ma'am.
And after the death of her mother, she was actually asked by Aunt Pauline if she wanted to stay in Baltimore with her siblings or come to North Carolina with her. A 3-year-old, but boy, a 3-year-old like you've probably seldom met.
I'm sure.
And she knew exactly what she wanted to do. She knew that she had been named after Aunt Pauline. She had lived with her 9 months while her mom was sick in Baltimore. And she decided that that's what she wanted to do. And so she did move to North Carolina. She lived with 2 aunts, Aunt Sally and Aunt Pauline, and also the grandparents. So she was in a home without any children. She lived in a home with 4 educated and strong-willed adults.
Wow.
And she lived in a home where, due to their financial status, she didn't really have many children-oriented things. So she read Paul Laurence Dunbar, or she read books that the adults had and they had read or they were interested in reading.
Wow.
And her Aunt Pauline taught 1st grade at a colored school. And she went every day with her Aunt Pauline to school. And though she was too young to be there and to really participate, she absorbed everything she heard and she learned. And one day she told her Aunt Pauline, who actually did formally adopt her, so she became her mother. Yeah. But she told her that she could read. And she said, "What do you mean you can read?" She said, "I can read. Give me a book." And she read one of the children's books that Aunt Pauline used in class. But Aunt Pauline thought, well, she's heard this many times. She's heard the other children reading. So she's memorized. And so Pauli challenged her, and Aunt Pauline gave her another book, which she had never seen before and was not used in school. And she read it and read every word. So she had actually taught herself to read through learning the skills that, excuse me, her Aunt Pauline had taught the other students. So she was
remarkable. I mean, she really just set the stage for the rest of her life, huh? She didn't wait for anybody, huh?
Never.
Well, I tell you, this is a perfect place to pause for a minute. We're going to pause. And when we come back, we're going to continue this journey. You've laid the foundation for us in terms of opening the way for thinking about how Pauli Murray emerges in the world. And so when we come back, We're going to continue this journey, which is going to take Pauli Murray up and down the East Coast, down to the West Coast, ultimately to Africa and back, and intellectually and culturally into the center of the human freedom struggle in the United States in the 20th century. So we'll be back in a moment with Rosita Stevens-Hosley, author of Pauli Murray, The Life of a Pioneering Feminist and Civil Rights Activist. Back at the Black Table in a moment.
Love our new Alexa.
It's a Buick.
Yeah, Alexa.
Buick.
Alexa.
It's a Buick.
It's an Alexa. It's a Buick. It's an Alexa. Coach, that's a Buick. That's an Alexa.
The Buick Enclave with available Alexa built in.
Pull up a chair. Take your seat at the Black Table with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Verizon just gave us all a brand new iPhone 13.
We've been customers for years. I thought new phones were for new customers. We got iPhone 13s too, switched to Verizon 2 minutes ago.
Ours were busted, and we still got a shiny new one.
Check it out. So wait, everybody gets the same great deal.
I think that's the point.
iPhone 13 on us for every customer. Current, new, everyone. On any unlimited plan, starting at just $35. All on the network more people rely on.
Welcome back to the Black Table. We are discussing the life of Pauli Murray with her niece, Rosita Stevens-Hosley, the co-author of Pauli Murray, The Life of a Pioneering Feminist and Civil Rights Activist. And we're going to get her to New York in a minute, but I was intrigued to find out that you actually stayed in her apartment in New York at some time. So I know we're going to get she had to stay in the apartment. So when we left, she had demonstrated to her aunt, to be her adopted mother soon, that she could read. But I was interested also in her father, because you represent not only the Fitzgeralds, but on the Murray side, her dad was a principal. He was an educator.
Yes, he was.
Huh. So she just had educators all over. I mean,
right.
Civil rights Civil War veteran. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Fitzgeralds, of course, who she ends up writing about, but also her father?
Right. Their father was a teacher, a musician, and a principal. And their mother was a nurse.
Yes.
Along the way, and it's been documented, but there's some confusion, I guess, around the area. Most people know that he was unable to take care of 6 young children when his wife died. And he took the older 3, 1 boy and 2 girls, with him. And then brother and sister of the Murray family had my mother and the younger boy. But their father got typhoid fever, I think during the time when many people did. And it's felt that the typhoid fever affected him mentally, emotionally, and physically. And with the pressures of trying to take care of the children by himself and being ill, he was committed to Crownsville Mental Hospital, where he died at the hands of a white guard. So Aunt Pauli came once to see him from Durham because she was determined not only to see him, but to get him released from there. And they would not allow her to go in. So she never got to see him when she had come back to Baltimore at 13.
And I'm sorry, I guess we should have set the time. She was born in 1910. So we're talking now really during the Great Depression, right? It's 1933.
All right.
Okay.
Yes. And one of the wonderful things, even more so than my mother and the other siblings, she was made very aware of who her mother and father were. Her Aunt Pauline made it almost a daily discussion of the love that she had received from her mother and father, little anecdotes about their personalities and what have you, what wonderful people they were. So she was very proud of that. She also learned about the family's attachment to slavery and to the white slave owners. And she was taught to be very proud of her white background, her Cherokee background, and her Black background. And you could not say anything about where she came from that she would not stand up and tell you, I'm proud of who I am and what I will become. And the other brothers and sisters were not taught so much about their actual mother and father. The aunt and uncle who took them over, wanted them to feel a part of their family. So Aunt Pauli had an extra pride for the Fitzgeralds and the Murrays, even though she spent her formative years living with the Fitzgeralds in Durham. And I think...
No, I just wanted to mention that her memoir and history, Proud Shoes, is one of the great documents in American letters and really in world letters. And, it should be read. Everyone should read that. It's fascinating to me as you're narrating this, how color and culture and class all intersect.
Absolutely.
And I guess it was because of Jim, or as she would say later in her life, as you write, Jane Crow, that she finds herself restricted to Black institutions, but she jumped in with both feet, huh? She was at the Colored Library. She wrote for the Carolina Times. And how early was she doing some of this stuff? Because she maintains a lifelong relationship with the Black press that I think people need to tell us about her.
And I'm still trying to find some of the things that I know that she wrote, but I have found many, and that will be something I will continue. She learned from a friend. When she was at Camp Terra, one of the camps that Eleanor Roosevelt had set up for women who were struggling, mainly because of the Depression, but it could be for health reasons or unemployment situations, homelessness. But Aunt Pauli went to one of these camps, and the one she went to in the Catskills was called Camp Terra. And one of her friends there was a person who, whenever she was concerned about something, she wrote about it. And she wrote to political people. She wrote to newspapers or what have you. And Aunt Pauli had always been a writer. She had written poetry. She'd written short stories. In fact, she actually went to college to become a writer.
I want to mention that because of the straitjackets of Jim Crow, as you write, she escapes to New York, ends up at college at 16 years old, and then has to finish 2 years of high school in 1 year.
Yes, absolutely. I'm telling you, unbelievable, amazing, brilliant woman that most people have never heard of. But she, and even in her later years, she used typewriters for confrontation, for explanation, for agitation, and for writing things that she was interested in, like poetry and short stories. So
I want to mention you put something else in the book that's fascinating. They wanted to discourage her from writing with her left hand, so she just figured out how to write with both of them, huh?
That's right.
This woman would
That's
not be deterred. But the typewriter, as you were saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and there is a chapter in the book called Confrontation by Typewriter.
Yeah.
But she began very early on writing, and she would write anywhere to anybody, what we would call probably op-eds now or letters to the editor. She would write anywhere she thought she could gain an audience. So if she were on the West Coast, she was probably writing to newspapers and magazines and pamphlets that were more popular in those days. But she used that typewriter, and she sent off her letters sharing whatever her opinions were. And this is really what formed a beginning to a friendship with Eleanor Roosevelt. She knew that Eleanor Roosevelt had provided the idea for these camps. And when Eleanor Roosevelt walked by her, she was admonished, Pauli was admonished for not standing and, greeting the First Lady and what have you, as the camp directors thought she should. Well, she was upset with President Roosevelt because she had written him about lynching. And she was very concerned about all the Black people who were being lynched, especially in the South. And she felt, as president and leader of the country, he had the power to stop lynching and certainly to pressure the states to stop it. And he needed those votes. He needed Southern votes. And he was unwilling to risk demanding that or doing what she considered anything about it. So she was sort of boycotting the First Lady at that time because of her disapproval of what she considered the lack of things that President Roosevelt did for Negroes, as we were called at that time. So she was actually expelled from this camp for not being polite to the First Lady.
Wow.
But that did not stop her from writing letters to the First Lady and to the President. And she found out that the First Lady would often take the mail that she had written and talk to the President about them. And the First Lady also had a newspaper column. So very often she would quote Aunt Pauli's thoughts and works and opinion in her newspaper column. And a little later on, she invited Aunt Pauli to meet her. And once they met, it slowly started a friendship. So all of my life, I had heard about Aunt Pauli's friendship with Eleanor Roosevelt.
Yeah.
And my cousin Bonnie, who I said is the oldest niece that's left, had gone to visit the First Lady at her home.
Yeah.
And so, of course, me being next and me being very interested in politics and social justice and what have you, in my own way as a junior high and high school student, I said for my graduation, I wanted to go and meet the First Lady. And so Aunt Pauli granted me that wish.
Really?
And yeah, so I was able to go and meet her at her home.
Yeah.
And later on, I found out that the two brothers, the two nephews who are still alive, followed as well. So Eleanor Roosevelt met Aunt Pauline, Aunt Sally, Aunt Mildred, who's another sister, and 4 of their children.
My goodness.
Along, so she actually knew quite a bit of our family.
Well, we're going to pause here. Actually, this is perfect because now you've opened the door to really her professional life and career. We're going to talk about her fight for human rights as it relates not only to race and culture, but to gender. And this is a perfect point of entry for that. So we're going to come right back in a moment, Ms. Stephen Hosley, to continue this conversation about your auntie, about the great Pauli Murray. Back in a moment.
Verizon just gave us all a brand new iPhone 13.
We've been customers for years. We got iPhone 13s too. Switched 2 minutes ago, literally right before this.
iPhone 13 on us on any unlimited plan for every customer, with plans starting at just $35. All on the network more people rely on.
Love our new Alexa.
It's a Buick.
Yeah, Alexa.
Buick.
Alexa.
It's a Buick.
It's an Alexa. It's a Buick. It's an Alexa. Coach, that's a Buick. That's an Alexa.
The Buick Enclave with available Alexa built-in.
Welcome back to the Black Table. We're discussing Pauli Murray with Rosita Stevens Hosley, author of Pauli Murray, The Life of a Pioneering Feminist and Civil Rights Activist, and also her niece. When we left, you were talking about her interaction with Eleanor Roosevelt, who I guess dubbed her a firebrand. I'm thinking about Patricia Bell Scott published those letters. But I want to go back just a second to come forward. You mentioned a young woman who she met in the camp, who had some influence on her, and they had more. I think it was Peg Holmes, if I'm not mistaken. They had more than just a kind of interactive relationship as thinkers. They had a fairly close relationship. And could you talk a little bit, because you write about this as well, beginning perhaps even with her aunt Pauline, who didn't put any barriers on her. Pauli Murray was really also exploring her sexuality at this time, huh?
She was, and I'm not sure at the time when she was very young in elementary school, she understood it all, but she realized that she didn't want to wear girls' clothes. She didn't like frilly things. She wasn't particularly interested in the kinds of games or toys or dolls or things that girls did. And she wanted to dress like a boy. She wanted to wear knickers and pants and things of that nature. And Aunt Pauline never put any pressure on her. She allowed her to select the clothes she wanted to buy and wear the clothes. However, when she went to church on Sunday, and they went to the Episcopal Church every Sunday,
yes,
she had to dress in a dress. But other than that, she allowed her to be free. And Aunt Pauline actually called her sometimes my boy girl. So she was
revolutionary for the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Aunt Pauli talked with her about it, but not from a medical standpoint or a psychological standpoint, but she just told her the things that she was interested in doing or not doing. But most of her life, unfortunately, she had to hide some of her true feelings and some of her concerns about her gender, her image, and what have you. If you can imagine someone who kept hitting brick walls because she was Black.
Yeah.
Then she began to hit brick walls because she was female.
Yeah.
And to have to add another criteria, thing that would make it difficult for her to even get a job, function in the world, be listened to.
Yeah.
and what have you. It was a problem, and she realized it was a problem, but she studied herself. She read a lot of medical books. She wrote to doctors asking for their help and asking for clarification.
Mm-hmm.
She tried to get doctors to give her hormones and what have you. When she had an appendectomy, she asked a doctor to look to see if she had extra organs, internally that she didn't know about. So she was very aware that she had thoughts that I guess at the time she probably thought were abnormal.
But it didn't stop her though, did it?
No, absolutely not.
Every brick wall she hit, she seems to have knocked down, although coming, of course, at a great personal cost. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how she broke these barriers. I'm thinking obviously about her trying to come home. She has her family to try to take care of, and they won't let her into the University of North Carolina after she's gotten that degree from Hunter, and she's went to the camps. She's established a relationship. And they won't, even though she's got members of the family who have given money to North Carolina.
Absolutely.
And then of course she ends up staying in New York. I mean, the social justice work she begins to do. You talk about her relationships with women, and you talk about that, she had relationships, intimate relationships, even with white women, but there's also a Black woman who you talk about, Adeline McBean. They took a bus ride through Virginia.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about these two sisters in Virginia in the 1940s.
They were going by bus to Durham. And when they got to Petersburg, the bus driver said, well, you're in Virginia now. Black people have to go to the back of the bus. And they didn't want to go to the back of the bus. They also felt that they paid the same fare as anybody else, and they shouldn't have to. But more importantly, and one of the things that I guess gave them the impetus to really fight going to the back of the bus was that the back of the bus was not as clean as the front of the bus. The back of the bus had broken seats, disrepair and what have you. So they not only were being pushed to sit in the back of the bus, but they were going to be uncomfortable or possibly cut themselves or hurt themselves on a broken seat. So they refused. And it just so happened that that particular bus driver was bent on his racist and segregated attitude, his attitude toward Black people, and so he pushed it further than probably maybe someone else would. So he called the police, and the police came, and there was a verbal confrontation, not physical confrontation. And it eventually became a situation where they were arrested. Now, it turns out that Virginia actually didn't have this law on the books at that time. So they were charged with disturbing the peace. Pauli was really hopeful that they would be arrested, and she had actually sent a telegram saying that they were arrested, and she had hoped that the NAACP would represent them, and possibly this would break that Jim Crow policy.
Yeah.
But it turned out that they were just charged with disturbing the peace. However, they were put in jail. Well, when they got to the jail was dirty. They didn't have sheets. There was like a bucket in the room for the bathroom. They were supposed to have, soap and clean linens and what have you. And Pauli had in the hopes that they might be arrested, and also because she thought they would be arrested, she had stuck some paper and a pen in her pocket. So she had something to write on. And she was able to get word out of the jail that they were there and what the problem was. And they were released, but they actually had to come back there to stand trial, quote unquote. But when they returned after her letters, and also the interaction of the First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, though she had asked for the governor to intercede, the governor of Virginia would not. But they did have a clean cell with clean linens and soap and better food when they returned to, finish their time in jail. Now, mind you, very few people know about this, but this happened 15 years before the incident with Rosa Parks.
Well, that's actually perfect because, 15 years before Rosa Parks and then 20 years before Robert Boynton, Amelia Boynton Robinson's son, who was at Howard Law School, ends up getting arrested in that same Virginia, Boynton versus Robinson. And then we see the Freedom Rides. But you're saying your auntie was a pioneer even in that. This is 1940. Let's talk about that intersection for a moment at Howard Law when she's not able to go to North Carolina. And through her own work, activism, her organizing work, she intervenes with others to raise money on behalf of a sharecropper, Odell Walker, there in Virginia. She captures the attention of some Howard University School of Law administrators who invite her to apply. And then she, some people who know Pauli Murray know she's one of the founders of the National Organization of Women. She helped craft what became Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. She's a saint in the Episcopal Church, becoming. But prior to all this, when she shows up at Howard, I think there was only one other woman, and she
dropped out. And Aunt Pauli was very excited to go to Howard. She thought she would be with her people. It was a renowned historical Black college, and she hit another brick wall. Our brothers didn't take her seriously. What was a woman doing there? Even Spotswood Robinson, who had offered her, she had been offered a scholarship to go. That's the only way she could ever have gotten there. But the scholarship allowed her to go to the classes, but it didn't pay for room or board or, money for the other things you have to have if you're going to be somewhere, 2 or 3 years in school without outside money. But even the professors that she had in the law school asked her, well, why are you here? What do you think you can do with this degree? And she seriously was not taken seriously. Well, what a lot of people don't know about Pauli Murray is don't challenge her. Don't try to push her down or dismiss her, because she worked as she would have anyhow, because she really valued education. But she worked and became the top student in the class of all males. By that time, the other female had dropped out. And there is a policy when you are the top person in the class that you become the judge of their courtroom that they have then. And they would not allow her to do that, even though she was scholastically the top student. The last year of her of law school, she was also the top student. So they finally acquiesced and allowed her to take that place. She also, while she was there, luckily we had a cousin named Susie Elliott, who happened to be the dean of students. And cousin Susie gave her a little place down in a dormitory building where she put a cot. She had a little hot plate. And she used, I think you call them gang bathrooms, where they're like 6 sinks and 6 toilets, and that are used for groups.
Yes, ma'am.
And she would literally take buckets of water back to her little area so that she could cook food and all. So most of her life, especially after she left home, she lived on very meager amounts of money and food, which also caused her from time to time to suffer from malnutrition, and to have medical issues. But she showed them. She was number one. She became the judge of the court. She had the best scholastic record. And guess what? She hit another brick wall. There was a policy that the top elite student of Howard University was given a scholarship to go to Harvard to get the next law degree, the master's law degree.
Of course, yeah.
And so she submitted her application, filled it out, put all of the accomplishments that she had achieved at that point, and received from Harvard that she was declined, not because she was Black, but because she was female. This was another time when she went to the Roosevelts, and President Roosevelt, as an alum of Harvard, even wrote and asked that she be considered for admission, which carried no weight at that time because their policy was that no women would be allowed in the law school. So she had hit another brick wall. She then, you mentioned going to North Carolina.
Yes.
She thought, well, she was interested in sociology, and she thought maybe she would go to North Carolina, where her family had given a large sum of money for scholarships, and she assumed she would therefore qualify for a scholarship, and she was denied as because of her race. That actually made national news. But she still was not allowed. And she finally got in at the University of California in Berkeley, and headed out to California to do that work.
Let's pause there. We only have one segment left, but I think if we can probably cover a great deal of it in terms of the highlights. People know, of course, that your aunt, in that trip that she took with her companion all the way to the West Coast, so much discrimination she experienced. So I guess you don't go to Harvard, you don't go to UNC, so you go to Cal Berkeley and get a law degree. But she comes out of that, as you say, framed at Howard Law, where she becomes intrigued with the 14th Amendment and challenges Spotswood Robinson, who wins a bet that I hope you'll talk about when we come back down the next session. But she ends up writing a book called States Laws on Race and Color, which I have here, along with the book that she wrote, the textbook for the University of Ghana Law School, which she helped set up. And Thurgood Marshall called that the Bible of Civil Rights, but it started.
Absolutely.
So why don't we come back in a second, Ms. Stephen Hosley, where we'll finish our conversation for now on really the early years and formative years of your aunt, Pauli Murray. We'll be back in a moment at the Black Table.
How about sushi?
I just had sushi for lunch yesterday.
How about tacos?
Automatic emergency braking, one of 6 advanced safety features standard on every 2022 Chevy Equinox. Find new technology. Find new roads. Chevrolet.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
These are the only bins that will accommodate larger overboard.
They put 10 in here?
10, and you don't come out till you die. And you eat in, you eat in.
Oh my God.
Love our new Alexa.
It's a Buick.
Yeah, Alexa.
Buick.
Alexa.
It's a Buick.
It's an Alexa. It's a Buick. It's an Alexa. Coach, that's a Buick. That's an Alexa.
The Buick Enclave with available Alexa built-in.
Welcome back to the Black Table. Greg Carr on the Black Star Network with Rosita Stevens-Hosley, the author of Pauli Murray, The Life of a Pioneering Feminist and Civil Rights Activist. We only have a few minutes left, so let's talk a little bit about her journey. She goes to Cal Berkeley. She returns from Cal Berkeley. I guess for a brief moment, she was a deputy attorney general and got sick or whatever, and then comes back. She does everything. I mean, she's at Paul Weiss, Rifkin, Wharton, and Garrison, the law firm. I think a young Ruth Bader Ginsburg crossed paths with her there. University of Ghana, where she helped set up and teach at the law school, writes the first book, Constitutional Law in Ghana, to train her. And then she ends up back in contact with the federal government. She's working, well, actually, I'm sorry, she picked up a degree from Yale, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just gonna kind of put this out there and have you react to any of it. Get the Commission on the Status of Women with JFK and lays the foundation for Title VII. I'm sorry, please.
Well, one of the things that I did not mention was that all law students had to write like a thesis before they graduated.
Oh, yes.
And she had mentioned in class that for the amendment where they talked about separate but equal, in other words, Black people did not have to have the same things that white people had, or an entree to it, like going to the same school or being treated in the same hospital. As long as they had equal opportunity for going to school or going to a hospital or anything of that nature. And she came up with a theory of it was fruitless for the NAACP or anyone else to keep going case by case. You know, one person wasn't admitted to this hospital or couldn't get into this school, but that you had to look at the equal part of it, that Black people were not treated equally. And she wrote her thesis about this, referring to the 13th and the 14th Amendment, and her professor, you know, she got the grade, she graduated, he put it in his drawer and didn't think anything of it. And later, and she also made a bet to Spotswood Robinson, $10, that within 25 years, Plessy versus Ferguson would be overturned. And they all laughed. the professors, the classmates, who of course were male. And lo and behold, 10 years later, it was overturned. And she found out that later than that, she got her $10, but at that point found out that her thesis that she had written as she graduated from law school at Howard had been used by the NAACP, Thurgood Marshall, Spotswood Robinson, and their team before the Supreme Court, which actually won Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas, which desegregated schools by law, at least, in the entire United States.
Well, can we, this is critical. I often tell my students, Ms. Stephen Hosley, that if it weren't for racism and sexism in this country, Pauli Murray would have been on the Supreme Court of the United States, and so would Spotswood Robinson, who didn't even give her the credit, because he ends up being a judge at D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. And Robert Ford came out there, Scalia, Beta Ginsburg, these two titans. But you make it clear that Spotswood didn't even give him, he argued that case and used her paper. But not only Spotswood Robinson, but the National Organization for Women, her work on the 14th Amendment, as you say, shapes the way we think about gender in American jurisprudence. But we only have a couple of minutes left, so I want to just ask you a very broad question. And of course, we talked a little bit about her framing the concept of Jane Crow to deal with that intersectionality. If there was something, as folk research the life of your aunt, give us something that we won't find in all of these books and articles. Tell us about your auntie that you got to spend 43 years with. In terms of her and in relation, tell us, who is Pauli Murray? Who do you want people to know Pauli Murray to be?
I think what most people don't know about her is her sense of humor. I don't know if I can share it with them in a few minutes, but she was very lighthearted. And I think it came out more in her boldness when she was with people. There are, and in her later life, when she studied to become a priest, some of the people who are actually alive now who have met her talk about the kinds of things that she did. She never allowed anyone to put her down. So it didn't matter whether you were the president or a general or a head of a corporation. She told you who she was and what she thought. And she thought she had the right to do that. That would be one of the things that I would think of. Another is that when she was 18, a bishop told her that she was like a prodigal child, and he recognized some kind of spirituality in her. Yeah. And this was never something that she expected to do, but because of losing the love of her life, she chose to spend the rest of her life giving herself to God and to her religion. A lot of people say to me, well, when did she become an Episcopalian? She was baptized an Episcopalian when she was less than one at St. James Episcopal Church in Baltimore, Maryland. Yeah. And I think she was baptized again in Durham. Yeah. So she was always an Episcopalian and very proud of it.
Yes, ma'am. This is. I hate we have to wrap, but I do want to at least mention in about 30 seconds that you are a contributor and a supporter and an ambassador of the Pauli Murray Center for History and Social Justice there in Durham. I know you're in the DC area, but in Durham, how can we support your ongoing work and the work of the center?
Well, I'm pleased to say I'm now a board member
Oh, okay.
And so I've been a volunteer and a contributor. But I would love for people to go on their website. It's the Pauli Murray Center for History and Social Justice, and find out all the wonderful work that they have done to uplift her legacy, but also to make room for anyone of any race, any gender, any lifestyle to come there and learn, communicate with others, meditate, do research, which should all be formally open probably in 2024.
Yeah.
They are a nonprofit, and we just celebrated last Saturday their 10th anniversary, or a decade of them working on this project. I would love for them to do that. Also, I wrote the book to bring information to young people.
Yes.
And we have done a lot of teacher activities and curriculum ideas and PowerPoints that can be used in the classroom. And I think it's important that when young children are inquisitive and open to learning about anything, they be exposed to people like Pauli Murray and others who not only may represent them personally, but represent other people in this beautiful world we live in.
That's exactly
So
right. See, you dropped that right at the end, and now we done gone over. But I have to ask you, how can we get some of these presentations? Are you doing presentations? You say you work, because this book actually, yes, it's written for young adults, but all ages. There's a shelf of books, as we know, by Pauli Murray, about Pauli Murray, but this is a different kind of book. How can we get access to some of that work?
I've made it easy for everybody.
Okay.
My website about on Pauli, including the book and the Pauli Murray Center, is called Preserving Pauli Murray. I have an email, preservingpaulymurray@gmail.com. My Instagram is Preserving Pauli Murray, and my Facebook is Preserving Pauli Murray. So if you just remember the word preserving, you can probably find me. I would love to come and work with teachers, speak at churches, speak before groups that are interested in social justice. And I have actually been doing that for about 5 years. So I've just retired as an educator about 6 weeks ago, so that I can 100% spend my time uplifting the legacy of Pauli Murray.
Well, congratulations on your retirement. Although I must say, if you were like the rest of the educators, I know you're good friends with Billingsley, among others, you all can't spell retirement. So it sounds like you're getting ready to take off. And that is exactly what we needed to hear there. So we have all the pertinent areas. If you remember Preserving Pauli Murray, you will find the work of Rosita Stevens-Hosey, who we are very grateful joined us for this session.
And thank you. And I live right outside of Washington, D.C. in Prince George's County, where I retired from teaching.
Yes, gorgeous Prince George's. We definitely gonna keep that in mind. Oh, well, I hope you'll come back and join us. We have some
I'd love to.
Well, we're gonna make that happen. Thank you so much for joining us for this hour of the Black Table. And,
thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. In a moment, we'll be back when we're going to clear the table and prepare for our next session of the Black Table. Back in a moment.
How about sushi?
I just had sushi for lunch yesterday.
How about tacos?
Automatic emergency braking, one of 6 advanced safety features standard on every 2022 Chevy Equinox. Find new technology. Find new roads. Chevrolet.
It's time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punching! Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice
to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A Black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on that.
Stay Black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared. You dig?
Welcome back to the Black Table. Greg Carr here at the Black Star Network. We have had just a remarkable hour with Rosita Stephen Hosley, the author of Pauli Murray, the life of a pioneering feminist and civil rights activist. And we're going to give our sister, St. Pauli Murray in the Episcopal tradition, we're going to give her the last word. But before we do, a couple of thoughts. We have to really engage the life and work of Pauli Murray on any number of levels. She has become prominent, more prominent now. She's going to become more prominent. But we have to understand, as we just heard, that she is a gift to all of our humanity. And when it comes to Black institutions, you know, we should think about her relationship to Black institutions, to HBCUs, to K-12. She worked at Bennett College. So what about the Bennett College and Spelman, the HBCUs that are there for Black women in particular? Her relationship to the Black press. We heard about her writing for papers in Carolina, for the New York Amsterdam News, in California, for the LA Sentinel, so many other places. You know, her perspectives on the South. Pauli Murray Center is in Durham. So we can think about her relationship to the South. But most importantly, as we heard Rosita Stephen Hosley say, is her relationship to humanity. So let's end with a poem from her epic poem, Dark Testament. Hope is a song in a weary throat, which is also the title of her memoir. Give me a song of hope and a world where I can sing it. Give me a song of faith and a people to believe in it. Give me a song of kindliness and a country where I can live it. Give me a song of hope and love and a brown girl's heart to hear it. Anna Pauline Murray, a titan, a major ancestor, someone we should not only respect, but learn from, continuing on into the future. So we'll see you next week. We'll see you next week at the Black Table here on the Black Star Network.